This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Our underground network is standing by at the drop zone to distribute.
The transmission is being jammed. Looks like the Empire came out to welcome us.
Attention, Rebel Convoy. This system is under Imperial control. Stand down or be destroyed.
What a surprise. Star Wars Sabers and Scoundrels.
Starships.
Carabast.
Yeah. Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. The Scoundrels Special Edition.
Greetings, Scoundrels. We're back. This is Dennis, and of course, I have the Dark Lord of the Shtick, Darth Taxus, with me. In this Scoundrel Special Edition, we're covering Secret Cargo. But first, what are you doing, Taxus?
Playing.
With what?
My TIE Defender. It's blowing up Y-Wings.
Oh. Well, nice sound effects.
Thanks. You know, I do a really good TIE Fighter. Do you want to hear it?
If you must.
Okay.
Well, that was impressive.
Yeah, thanks. I've been working on it for a week.
All right. Well, anyway, so if you're new to the show, welcome. Normally, Starship Sabers and Scoundrels features news, discussion, shenanigans, and listener feedback. However, this is a Scoundrel Special Edition, and this is where we pare down our show to just a discussion section. Lately, most of these discussions have been about recent episodes of Rebels. But before we get the episode going tonight, I have a surprise for you, Taxus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hope you've been catching up on Mon Mothma and some of the other related elements of this show, because I have a few trivia questions for you.
Well, I subscribe to Mon Mothma monthly, so...
Well, that'll help you out with one of these then. Yeah. So, you ready?
Sure.
Okay. This one's not too difficult, and if you're paying attention to this episode of Rebels, you should get it. What planet does Senator Mon Mothma represent in the Senate?
Chandrila. Very
good. 1 for 1. All right, this one's a little bit more difficult. What company manufactures the Y-Wing?
Cohen Sayer.
Very good. I'm impressed.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
West End Games, man.
Yeah, this one is also on the easy side. What modification has the Rebellion made to the Y-Wings since it has come into service after the Clone Wars?
They die a lot easier? No, in all seriousness. They removed the outer hull armor to make it lighter and easier to work on.
Yeah, exactly. I just would have said, accepted, remove the outer plating, the armor, whatever. Yeah. Okay, so this one is slightly more difficult. I have a feeling you'll get it, though. Including Legends, where did the TIE Defender originally make its debut?
Oh, TIE Fighter.
Do you remember when that came out?
Video game. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
and when did that...
90, hold on. 94?
That's correct.
Oh, thank you.
So you're at 4-4. Wow. All right, this one is, again, on the moderate side, and it has a bonus point. What is Dutch Vander's real name, and what planet does he hail from?
John from Onderon.
Very good.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, I can't believe I actually knew that. I don't know. You know what? I think it was... I can't remember what I was reading, but I just remember making a note that, hey, that's the same planet Saw Gerrera. And of course, I remember Onderon because I really loved the Tales of the Jedi comic where all that stuff went down on that planet out there. So
okay. Well, let's get into this episode. So, sound the alert. From this point forward, this episode will be diving into the details of Secret Cargo, and there are spoilers ahead. Here is our episode summary. While waiting to rendezvous with another rebel cell, Hera, Ezra, Zeb, and Chopper wait aboard the Ghost in a debris field. An infiltrator droid unexpectedly arrives, and before they can destroy it, the other rebels, including Gold Squadron, show up. Although the infiltrator was destroyed, it managed to alert the Empire, which attacks and disables Gold Squadron's freighter, forcing them to transfer their secret cargo to the Ghost, which just happens to be Mon Mothma. Although some of Gold Squadron's members and the Ghost escape, Thrawn correctly deduces the route through a nebula and dispatches a TIE Defender after them. Despite a few casualties, Hera and Gold Squadron successfully evade the Imperial pursuers, but are intercepted by Imperial Star Destroyers on the other side of the nebula. Using an old smuggler's trick, Gold Squadron causes part of the nebula to explode and disable the Imperial ships, allowing the rebels to escape. Once they arrive at their destination safely, Mon Mothma transmit a speech that summons various rebel ships together, thereby forming the rebel fleet. So that's it. That's our summary. And what'd you think, Taxus, about this episode?
I liked it from the whole galactic culmination of what we've been waiting to see scale, where it's like, finally they're assembling the might of the rebellion here. And I liked how they worked in Dantooine to that. Right. Leia just wasn't pulling that out of her hat. Overall I thought it was pretty solid. There were some, there were a lot of pluses. There were some, okay, kind of parts to it. And, but overall I thought it was great just because it showed that, that what happens, like where'd this big fleet come from that we see in Rogue One.
Right. Well, right off the bat, it was nice to see Hera again. I feel like it's been forever since she's been in Rebels. She was largely absent from the Trials of the Darksaber and then in Through Imperial Eyes. So it was good to get her back, and not only to have her back, to give her more of a prominent role, because she's just been gone. She had won the Hera's Heroes episode earlier this season, and then but after that, she just hasn't been a feature player this season.
I have a feeling she's going to become more and more in prominence here as we go through, because there was no Kanan, and Sabine's doing the Mandalore thing,
right?
Which in the beginning, when Ezra was shooting at that robot, I kept thinking Sabine would have hit that.
Well, I didn't think about that at all. I thought it was, they were in a debris field, and they were powered down, and suddenly it was powered up, and here you go. But so that's the beginning of this episode. We got Ezra, Hera, Chopper, and Zeb hanging out in the Ghost, waiting for. They're not exactly sure what they're waiting for. They just know some other rebels are going to show up, and that they've got some fuel pods attached to the Ghost, and they're going to do some refueling for them. But they have precious little about this mission before that infiltrator droid shows up. That reminded me of one of the very early episodes of the Clone Wars. It was during the arc. Oh shoot! What was the name
know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Maleficent was there, and the clones and. Were hiding out in the escape pod, and the battle droids were coming around, just destroying all the survivors that were in those deactivated things. So that kind of reminded me of that, just that quietness and making sure everything was powered down. And
what it kind of reminded me of?
What's that?
That's a good point. I was thinking about that scene in Serenity where they're trying to sneak past all the Reavers, and
just by being calm and hanging out.
and Jane's sitting on that big cannon that they mounted on the outside of the hull, and they're just real quiet, and you've got one Reaver ship that kind of takes notice, and then Mal's like, okay, now, and he just kind of lets loose, then all of a sudden all heck breaks loose. That's kind of what it reminded me of. That whole silence.
Having only seen the first 2 episodes of Firefly, I assume I can imagine what that was like.
Sorry.
That's quite all right.
I hope I didn't spoil anything.
No worries. All right. Anyway, so moving on. So they, they're tracking down the infiltrator droid, and then the other rebels come out of hyperspace, including Gold Squadron, and destroy the droid, and then they start this whole refueling operation. And there's some tension between Gold Squadron. I don't remember what her name is, but one of the pilots gets out of the Y-wings that docks with a Ghost to get refueled.
She was a golden girl.
Well, I don't know about that, but she kind of lays into Ezra. It's like, I know who you are, and you all have been making things more difficult for everybody. You destroyed an Imperial Star Destroyer, and you blew up that communications tower on Lothal, and when you do things like that, it makes it tough for everyone else. Which I guess begs the question. Well, first of all, the other part of that is that that's Dutch Vander's introduction to the show. He comes aboard the Ghost as well, introduces himself as Gold Leader. What exactly did Gold Squad want them to do?
Yeah, right.
The whole point is to fight the Empire. Yeah. It is to resist the Empire. It's not like there is no alliance yet, and this, which is made clear by the end of this episode. It's not like they were coordinating plans.
Right.
You know, hey, we should tone down our fight because that might make it difficult for other rebels out there to do what exactly.
Yeah, really.
I don't know. It felt like an unfair criticism to me.
Well, I agree. I think, you know, at what point is somebody going to do something that's going to make things harder for everybody? You know, because that's the only way it seems that you're going to get people to say, hey, you know, somebody can actually do something and I'd like to do something too. You know?
Yeah.
And in fact, in a lot of ways, this episode, at least the end, and we'll get to it, kind of reminded me of what Ezra did at the end of season 1. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and to get people motivated too.
Yeah. Like they explicitly make reference to that. I mean, let's get to that point real quick. So there is a rebel adjutant by the name of Erskine Samaj, who I am certain this is James somebody else in real life.
Yeah.
I bet I can't turn Erskine around to Nick Surrey. I can't make that a name, and that didn't reveal anything when I Googled it, but I suspect that's reference to somebody. So he comes aboard and he's making a big deal about how nobody can go aboard their ship. No one can go aboard their cruiser, freighter, whatever it was, because they're sensitive. There's something sensitive on there. No one can do it. And then, you know, so we just heard about previously Mon Mothma giving some speech that angered the Emperor by calling him a secret killer or something like that. Executioner, right. And so now she's kind of on the run. Well, lo and behold, the Empire shows up because that infiltrator droid was destroyed and they attack. It damaged this other cruiser. So everyone that's there has to come aboard the Ghost, and here comes Mon Mothma. So that was the secret cargo that they were talking about.
You know, Erskine was a weenie.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. He was just kind of a, you know, senator. You know, it's like, shut up. You know what I mean? Just,
well, I don't know. I have some sympathy for the guy. He's in charge of her safety, and you know, he's under a lot of stress and pressure to make sure that she is safe. And now they're out in the middle of this debris field. They just ran into an infiltrator droid. He wants to get things moving. He doesn't want to bring any more attention that's brought to that ship. And so he needs to get things moving because he's afraid that they're going to get attacked by the Empire. And then they get attacked by the Empire.
Right.
And, you know, again, he's in charge of her safety. He's trying to get her to be safe. And that's always the case. It's kind of a trope where the person that's doing the protecting always wants the person that's being protected to hide, to do things that are safe. And the person that needs to be protected is saying, no, I have a grander purpose that I need to carry out.
Yeah.
And she does. There's no denying that.
Yeah. He, like a weenie, he wanted to tuck tail and run. Back to the one place that the Empire would never think to go look, her home world. So, well,
is it so much that it wasn't that they weren't going to look there, is that he just was certain he could keep her safer there? That, you know, whatever the case may be. Again, I'm with you. It's a classic Star Wars problem.
Yeah.
You know, where do we hide this person? I know, on the planet they came from. You know, Luke on Tatooine and now Mothma on Chandrila. Yeah. But anyway, so moving on.
He probably has a weenie cave or something he could have tucked her away in.
Moving on, they flee from the Empire. They get away. You know, it's not they didn't have their utmost forces brought there. It was, you know, it was a cruiser and a transport ship and some ties, and they lose a Y-wing or two in the process, but they get away. And they report back to Thrawn, who correctly deduces that Hera is going to attempt an escape route through the Archeon Nebula. Mm-hmm. It's an old smuggler's trick. This nebula's got some stars that are forming in it. It's kind of perilous, but he's put two and two together that, you know, she'll evade the Imperial blockades, and that's how she's going to get away. Mm-hmm. Which is, of course, what they do. You know, it's Thrawn being Thrawn. He studied them, their art, and everything else, and he's figured out what's going to happen. So, not only that, and this is, I'm sure, your favorite part of this episode. He. You know, Governor Price wants to carry out this mission, so he says yes and take one of their prototype TIE Defenders with them.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, that thing. I mean, it's just not even fair. One of those with Y-wings. I mean, it just if it wasn't for the Nebula, I mean, it would have made short work of everybody. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, because I'm not certain that, you know, the TIE Defender shows up and it took out two of the Y-wings right off the bat. And that's because those Y-Wings turned around and charged straight for it.
Yeah. And then you had the one guy that sacrificed himself. That was pretty cool.
Right. But, the only one that knew anything about those TIE Defenders was Ezra. Mm-hmm. No one else knew anything about them. They didn't know its capabilities, that it had heavy cannons, that it was shielded, that it had these extra abilities. It wasn't a normal TIE. Well, obviously it wasn't a normal TIE, but it had as many advanced capabilities as it did. If they did, this is Gold Squadron, do you think they would have put up a better fight? Do you think they would have done something different?
I don't really know. That's a good question. I don't think it would have mattered.
Well, but might it have? Because those Y-Wings had ion cannons. They got a beat on it later, which we'll get to, and they took out its shields.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think,
but that was more Jedi maneuvering and stuff. I think that was.
That's part of it. Yeah. But my point here is that they had numerical superiority, and if their first two pilots hadn't acted rashly, I wonder. Yes, the TIE Defender is a superior craft to the Y-Wing. It's newer, it's faster, it's more nimble, it's got better weaponry, shields. Mm-hmm. It's better than anything they're dealing with. It combines the maneuverability of the TIE craft with the weaponry and the shields of the Rebellion's craft. So it's a superior craft. But the point is, there's still numerical superiority here, and I'm thinking that 4-on-1. Even with the advantages of the TIE, may have been a bit too much for it, for that TIE Defender. But
you also had an ace flying that thing.
Well, okay. I mean, his name was Volscaris, yeah. So I suppose, but it's not like Dutch Vander was any slouch either. So, right. But anyway, it's also a prototype, and one of the first times we've seen these things in battle. It's just, I think, a key to some of his success in this was A, surprise, and B, those Y-Wings were tasked with defending Mon Mothma and the Ghost. There was only so much they could do. Yeah. And he showed up with 2 TIE interceptors at the beginning.
That's true. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty ingenious about how to, even the odds to a certain extent.
We're talking about when they got close to that. Yeah, that proto star.
That made me feel really tense. Yeah.
That's been a theme for you in these episodes.
Well, seeing sections of the Ghost kind of rip away. I don't know. I guess I feel like we're getting closer and closer to the culmination of the series. Nobody's safe. I don't know. Except, I know Hera.
Right. Well, I guess. I was certain they were going to pull through this because we know where Dutch Vander is seen in Rogue One and A New Hope. That's true. We know Hera survives this. We know certainly Mon Mothma survives this. Mm-hmm. So I guess, and they pretty much ran out of other pilots at that point. So I guess maybe I was more concerned for the Ghost and its long-term viability than anything. Yeah. But again, we see that in Rogue One too. But I like these scenes because it reminded me of the resourcefulness of Rebel pilots and using things like these smuggler tricks, which, they got into that nebula and Hera told them, disable your torpedoes because those could cause the gas to ignite and explode if you launch them. And we don't want that while they're in it. And then, let's get close to that proto star. And, that caused, because she knew the interceptors weren't shielded, so they weren't going to be able to withstand the heat as long as they could. Right. And even then, even with its capabilities, the Defender had to back off first before the Ghost did. So, there was that trick again, just trying to, find their way through that nebula in the first place. I like these types of things about, where the Empire is might and superior technology and stuff like that. The Rebellion frequently has to rely on its wits and their guile.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was really cool. I like seeing, in a way, it's allowing Hera's character to shine too. Right. And to a certain extent, Ezra's becoming quite a pilot himself.
Yeah, I like that. You know, we really hadn't had a chance to. Have we seen him as a fighter pilot before? I mean, so much. I mean, he's been in TIEs and he's done. He helped steal those Y-Wings, but even then, he wasn't piloting one of the Y-Wings. He was plummeting to the planet when that happened.
I guess we've seen him fly the Spectre or Phantom. I mean,
yeah, I just hadn't ever really thought of him as a fighter pilot before tonight. Now, Hera made that reference, remember everything I taught you. So apparently they had been working on, which was a clever bit of storytelling. That, with that one line, her saying, remember what I taught you, or something to that effect, it became apparent that not only is he training with Kanan as a Jedi, he's doing some training with Hera as a pilot. And without us having to have had episodes of watching that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Nice way to backfill it. And, I kind of wanted to find out who that girl was with Gold Squadron. I was hoping it was Nora Wexley or something. But
that's a good thought.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at the credits next time and see what they say.
I didn't think to do that.
Yeah. Huh.
Well, who was the girl who was Princess Leia's Alderaanian friend? Was she a Y-wing pilot?
Yvonne,
yeah.
She flew an X-wing, I believe.
Oh, okay.
She also had gold hair, and I thought this lady had black hair, dark hair.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, moving on. So, while they're kind of making this trek, Mon Mothma shows up in the cockpit of the Ghost and hands Hera a drink. And
I thought that was nice.
Well, it was a nice gesture to bring her a drink, but just the conversation that they had. She starts it off with Mon Mothma saying, "Oh, sometimes I wish I could be like you pilots and I could just leave my troubles behind," or something. I was like, what does she think Hera's doing? I mean,
right.
She comes from Ryloth, where her planet had been occupied by the Separatists, and now it's occupied by the Empire. So she's been doing freedom fighting there. She took her mission and her home base to essentially to Lothal, where she's been fighting Imperials there. Hera is not she's a good leader and she wears it well, but she's not exactly carefree.
No, right.
So I don't know. I thought that was just a tad bit on the it was well intended, but I thought on the tad bit on the condescending side for Mon Mothma there.
Maybe a little bit of the grass is always greener on the other side, or maybe she was trying to break the ice somehow, showing that she appreciated her life or her lifestyle. Right. But it was good. It's I don't think that Mon Mothma really needed a lesson as to what a soldier goes through, or a pilot, or anything like that, or an operative. But it was kind of a good little reminder of people out there who are putting their lives on the line, and specifically putting their lives on their line for her, because she's the one who's rallying everybody together. And that is important. You do need a figurehead.
Right. Now, again, I don't dispute any of that. It's just the line about,
Yeah.
you leave your troubles behind.
Yeah.
Well, not so much, Senator. There's lots of people that have, running for something and they carry a burden with them. But anyway, so they make it through the nebula. Basically, the Ghost makes a run for it while Dutch and Ezra kind of fend off the TIE Defender. And no sooner do they get out of the nebula than 2 Imperial Star Destroyers pull up, and so Mon Mothma is trying to buy Hera time by some exhaustive list of demands. She's making on the Empire for her surrender, ostensibly because she doesn't want anyone else to have to pay for her mistakes or her ways or her crimes or whatever it was she said. And there's that tense whispering going on between the two of them. And it doesn't work. Governor Price says, forget that.
As soon as they
reject your demands, here's the tractor beam, and just in time for Dutch and Ezra to arrive on the scene, and of course they use their torpedoes to ignite the nebula, disable basically everyone that's attacking them, and they get away, and they get to hyperspace, and then they get to Dantooine, of all places, where Mon Mothma makes her speech about resigning from the Senate, and she's now going to be fighting for everyone on the front lines, and attempting to rally all these rebels together in the fleet. I didn't get this part 100%. There was a vague reference at the beginning of the episode, or once we knew that Mon Mothma was going to be here, that there was a meeting. The meeting is what Hera called it. And then, so she gets to Dantooine and she makes a speech and all of a sudden the ships show up, and I don't know. That wasn't really a meeting. That was just a speech. And was everyone really just waiting for Mon Mothma to say something fantastic to join? Did I miss something there, or what was your impression of that scene?
Okay, and this might be just a little bit of headcanon going on, but I was wondering if the speech she's giving, because it really wasn't that, like, riveting, you know? It was just kind of matter of fact. It just made me wonder if certain words or phrases weren't used that indicated where the meeting point should be. You know? Because why wasn't everybody waiting at Dantooine? You know? Where they got there first. So that's why I was wondering if there was some significance to that to try to signal to the different cells, okay, these are the coordinates, you know, this is where you're supposed to come. Which would be a good way to keep it hidden. Yeah, I like that possibility. I suppose that's potential, but then it seems weird because it's like all those ships arrived at the same time, though. If they were all over the place, you know, I'm probably thinking about this too much. The point is the fleet assembled, but it is, and it was a fine speech. You know, it was another Ezra speech type moment that there's people out here fighting. The Empire is something worth fighting. There's reasons to fight them. And, you know, and their zealousness for order, they're committing atrocities against the citizens. So I get all that, but so the fleet shows up. And well, maybe we didn't see the full fleet. Maybe we just saw who was closest by the end of the credits. By the time the credits were rolling.
I suppose, but you know, it's but you know, the reaction was, look how many there are, and you know, oh, there's one, there's more, and there's the entire fleet. So anyway, I'm certain I'm missing something there, but be as it may, the fleet is now, there's a fleet assembled, a rebellion fleet. But you know, in the past, we've had, there used to be Corellian corvettes, but now they're called Alderaanian blockade runners, and we've had those Hammerhead corvettes, and you know, they acquired an aircraft carrier. They've had all these components, but they've been very dispersed, and now they've got a centralized fleet, complete with Nebula B frigates and Home One. Now, that was in fact Home One. I went, you know, it was a big Mon Calamari cruiser, but then I was looking at the episode guide today, and the concept art was for Home One. And you know, all those battle cruisers look a little bit different anyway, and that's what it was. So Akbar's there. You know, that's his ship.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. And this is the first time in Rebels that we've got Mon Calamari cruiser or a Nebula B frigate.
Which makes you wonder where Akbar is during the whole Scarif thing. Yeah,
well, Home One wasn't there, was it? I mean, the Profundity was the only Calamari cruiser in that battle. So, you know, I guess they had to break them up to do some things. And, you know, that was Radis. You know, they had different fleets there. And so, you know, Radis was ticked off after the discussion on Yavin 4, and then he took his fleet and went to Scarif to do something about it. So, you know, for whatever reason, you know, Akbar was there. I hope to get that story. That could be fascinating. A
little interpolitic kind of thing in the rebellion. I was thinking that maybe it was a little bit like the Alamo, where Travis kept receiving orders to join the main Texian army, and he kept saying, no, we have to stay here and defend this part, you know, kind of going against orders. Maybe that's sort of the whole Radis versus Akbar thing. You know, maybe Akbar's like, no, we shouldn't engage our, you know, fleet too early, and that's when Radis, of course, he just barges right in, you know.
Yeah, there could be any of dozens of explanations for that, and I suspect at some point, could be this year, could be years from now, we'll find out what that story is.
But it is interesting. There's a lot of holes that could be
someone's going to ask Pablo Hidalgo why he's not there. Just watch. In fact, we should tweet. Anyway, so they've got their fleet now, and you know, things are shaping up. We're going to, you know, looking at probably some, you know, huge conflict towards the end of the season. They've been gearing up for this attack on the Lothal manufacturing capabilities, and we'll see what happens there. All right, so you have any other big thoughts about this, or do you want to get into your concluding thoughts and, you know, grade this thing?
This kind of had a different feel of an episode to me. It didn't feel so much like the band of this of rebels like we've known them, the core group. It felt almost like they've been amalgamated into something bigger, like the story suddenly has shifted from being just about, the 5 main characters and Chopper, of course, to being about the Rebel Alliance. I don't know.
Right.
They're I'm sure they're going to have more individual type small group, but there was something that felt different about this, like it was shifting it into a totally different level of story.
I agree with you. The show has evolved from this one group of rebel freedom fighters just taking on missions, trying to do good for people and where they can, and smaller actions, to we really are getting into the birth of the Rebel Alliance, and now we're getting into more of a coordinated resistance to the Empire. So the missions are going to be bigger and better. That doesn't mean we aren't going to get these episodes that focus on individuals. We got one next week with Chopper and AP5. Then it looks like we're later this season, or right after that, I guess it's the next episode after that, is Ezra heading to Tatooine to deal with this Maul versus Kenobi showdown that's coming. So, but I think you're right. I think the show is definitely taking on a different tone, a different feel, and which is a good point to bring up. They've just recently announced this past week that season 4 of Rebels is coming. So this is not the final season. So, and I've heard Filoni say in the past that he wants to kind of at least get Rebels up to the events of Rogue One. So there's plenty to do there. Yeah.
Do you think we're going to see the Separatist droids from earlier in the season?
Separatist droids from those guys again. Yeah. Possibly. I don't know. You know what? I kind of hope we don't. And here's what I'd hope to see them next. And whatever show comes after Rebels.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Some post Return of the Jedi show or something like that. That might be a nice place to see them appear after that.
Yeah, it would be cool. Oh, they're just making a lot of callbacks with AP. I'm glad that they're working him in. I know foreshadowing to the next episode, but...
Right.
Yeah, but overall, this was a pretty good, solid episode. TIE Defender, who can deny the greatness of that? The formation in the Rebel fleet, that's also awesome. You can almost feel like the excitement building in the cockpit as each ship came out of hyperspace. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of cool hyperspace kind of action sequences in this one. I loved the explosion of the nebula. I liked the effect of the damage that it did to the Star Destroyers. I thought that was really cool. I'm gonna give this thing a good, high mid. I'm gonna give it a 96. Pretty decent. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I really liked it.
At some point, I'm gonna have to go back to all these reviews and figure out and see where I grade everything to see how consistent I am on them. Yeah. My thoughts on this is that I really like seeing Hera again. She's always been one of my favorite characters on Rebels. It was good to see additional new characters from the original trilogy, Dutch and Mon Mothma, make it into here. And they did so in a way that didn't feel too small galaxy, because we are heading to toward this culmination. They've been building up to this type of thing all season, the Rebel fleet assembling. So those are good marks. Like I said earlier, I like the smuggler's tactics with working through the nebula, and so the TIE Defender's here, which I got to tell you, I remember seeing the TIE Defender back in that old TIE Fighter game, and I thought, what is this ship? It looks ridiculous. But it has grown on me over time, and I like the way it's being. I don't know, I just never could really appreciate the way it flew and its armament and everything else, but I've grown to like it, and if nothing else, nostalgia for that TIE Fighter game has made me really appreciate it. And so it looked great in this episode.
Had only blaster cannons, no ion cannons. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, well,
there's probably modifications. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing them destroy the factory these things are coming from. If that's what happens. But all that being said, what can I say? It was a great episode. I liked it a lot. you just thinking back to how I've graded things recently to keep it fair in that range, I guess I'd give it about a 94, which is still an A. But I liked it, and I'm looking forward to, we've got just a couple episodes left now on this season, and some big things to happen. And at some point, we're going to have to get our, final, I guess technically it's 4 episodes with the last 2 being combined into one of those 1-hour movies, but our, get your Deadpools out and see, pick your markers and see who you think is gonna survive and who's not by the end of the season. I would have given it a 97, except Erskine's a weenie, so I had to knock a point off because of that. But I think because of the overall, just the magnitude of the events in this, that's why I guess I'm giving it significant points. You know what I mean? Sure. Yeah. So okay. Okay, well, I'm just about gonna let you get back to your Star Wars Starship toys, but before you do, I thought I'd fill everyone in on our social media and stuff. We can be found at SQPod on Twitter. You are at Darth Taxus, and I am at DJKVR2. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SQPod. And as always, we love getting your email. Send us your rebel thoughts on sqpod@retrozap.com. If you'd like to support us, we would appreciate an iTunes review. We haven't had one in a while, but you can leave us one there, and we'll make sure we read it next time. We're also official supporters of Star Wars Celebration Orlando, which is April 13th to 17th at the Orange County Convention Center. Make sure you get your tickets at StarWarsCelebration.com, and we can't wait to see you there. Also, make sure to check out all our other great shows in the RetroZap Podcast Network, including Skywalking Through Neverland, which, speaking of Celebration, has some great survival guides. Trade Federation is doing a Darth Vader comic book club, which has been pretty good. They've gotten through the first 2 issues of that. Yeah, it's cool. And the Doomcast recently returned, so check those guys out as well and read along. If you haven't gotten into Dune yet, I'd highly recommend reading those books and listening to the shows. It's quite a great supplement to those novels. So anyway, there's plenty on the RetroZap Podcast Network for any kind of fans. With that, you got any final thoughts, Taxus?
No, pretty much like space. My head is empty.
Alrighty then. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Thanks for listening, everyone, and until next time, may the Force be with you.